are now in the deep end of horror.
Marc of Horror here with Hugsy, Chupacabra, and Viola. And we're here to talk to you about the year 1981. 1981 had a wonderful top 10, chock full of specific genre directors. Coming in at number 10 for biggest box office horror of 1981 is Tobe Hooper's The Funhouse, which is basically, it is just a slasher film. However, it has an imaginative setting, and it's used quite well, and it's a lot of fun, and also features some ugliness. So it ports over some things from the 70s. A lot of 70s horror was really ugly, and 80s slashers grew more and more slick as you went along. This is an early one, and check out The Funhouse. Coming in at number 9 is our dear departed Wes Craven with Deadly Blessing. Here we have a horror where Ernest Borgnine gets to chew up the scenery, and we also have, as you can see from the picture, Michael Berryman. Sharon Stone is not the star, but she is one of the ladies in this film long before she became famous. And this is Scream Factory's collector's edition, back when they made some of their collector's editions in DVD. Watch it. Deadly Blessing. 1981. I forgot to mention, besides top directors, 1981 was also the year of the werewolf, as you'll see on our list. Coming in at number 8 is the werewolf-themed Wolfen. Not exactly werewolf, but I think you get what I mean, especially if you've seen it. Stars Albert Finney, Gregory Hines, Diane Venora, and it's an excellent film based on a Whitley Strieber novel, Wolfen. Coming in at number 7, another of my favorite directors, David Cronenberg. David Cronenberg's Scanners. I absolutely adore David Cronenberg's body horror. Pretty much any of his body horror films I love. This is one before he went Hollywood. This was when he was still filming in Canada. And Scanners stars Patrick McGoohan and is an absolutely wonderful tale of psychic powers. 2 sequels followed from this, not directed by David Cronenberg, and then there was a spin-off called Scanner Cop, which itself had a sequel. Scanners is brilliant. The others, not so much. Scanners. Well, did I not say that this was the year of the director? Our next highest film is Joe Dante's The Howling. Another werewolf film, but not the one that made it to the top of the list. The Howling features John Carradine in a small role. He was 75 when he made this film, and he would still go on to make 31 more films after this. Stars Patrick McNee and Dee Wallace, and this is a really good film. Watch The Howling. Our next film on the list is the third film in the Omen series, The Final Conflict, with Sam Neill as a smug, smarmy Antichrist. He's actually quite fun in the role, but this film lacks a lot of what made the first 2 films so much fun. Still, you get Sam Neill getting to take over the world. Omen 3, Final Conflict. Plus, this set, wherever you get it, is so cheap. I think it's usually $9.99, and you get 4 movies on Blu-ray. That's The Omen, which is a classic. Damien Omen 2, which is almost as awesome as the first. Omen 3, Final Conflict. And then you can take that 4th disc, the one where Liev Schreiber remakes the first Omen movie, and you can just throw it away. because it was only $10 for the other 3 discs. Omen 3, Final Conflict.
Oh, I'm so proud of my little Damien. In 1976, that little son of a bitch, that precocious 6-year-old, managed to survive a series of accidents revolving around his family, resulting in the death of both his nanny and his adoptive mother. Then his adoptive father went insane and killed his new nanny, dragged him to the church, and would have killed him as well had he not been shot by the police. 2 years later, when the 6-year-old turned 13, more accidents claimed the lives of family and friends, and his adoptive Aunt Anne went mad and killed her husband and herself. Despite all of these horrific setbacks, this bright young teenager aged into his 30s in just 3 short years. 1981's The Final Conflict, later retconned as Omen 3, The Final Conflict, does not have any of the heft of the first 2 features. Sam Neill in his first Hollywood movie shines as the smarmy Antichrist, but the first film had Gregory Peck, Lee Remick, David Warner, Leo McKern, and Patrick Troughton. Damien had William Holden, Lee Grant, Lou Ayres, Sylvia Sidney, and Lance Henriksen. Final Conflict just has Neil and Rossano Brazzi. Jerry Goldsmith returns again for the score, but just comes across as a tired riff on his earlier Omen scores, which were fabulous. The plot and deaths are relatively uninteresting. There's a sex scene that I have to assume, and I use that word deliberately, was unintentionally hysterical. To show how truly evil Damien is, they imply that he's done something shocking that not only is fairly commonplace now, but had actually been in Hollywood film almost a decade prior in Last Tango in Paris.
Well, coming in at number 4 is the second in a long line of, well, you can see I'm wearing the shirt, can't you? Friday the 13th, Part 2. Was actually the first one that I saw. I missed Friday the 13th when it came out in theaters. Yes, I am that old. But when Friday the 13th Part 2 came out, I saw that one. And Adrienne King, who is the heroine in the first film and appears in the second film, she is absolutely fabulous. I got to meet and chat with her for half hour, 45 minutes at a con, and she is just wonderful to talk to. Friday the 13th Part 2, of course, features the first time that Jason is our killer, famously skewered in Scream, because Mrs. Voorhees is the actual killer in the first one. This is the first time Jason is our killer, and he basically wears a potato sack on his head, as he doesn't get his mask until the third time.
Hello?
I have a soft spot for Friday the 13th Part 2, since it's the first one I saw in the movie theater. Films are so much better in the theater unless you're one of those types that you can't leave your phone alone for 5 minutes, in which case please stay home, but I digress. This is Jason's first outing as the killer, though he wouldn't adopt the hockey mask until the next outing. Part 2 essentially follows the exact same formula as Part 1. If it ain't broke, don't fix it. Instead of Mrs. Voorhees killing counselors to revenge her son, it's her son, Jason, killing counselors to... well, you get the idea. There are plenty of inventive kills here, but Tom Savini's absence is notable. Also, several of them are stolen straight from Italian giallo. Jason, played by Warrington Gillette and Steve Dash, and an unknown female stunt person, works better as an unstoppable killing machine than Betsy Palmer did as a surprise killer. Paul Exposition tries to let us know why there's a Jason, but it's pretty lame. The victims are not annoying like they are in Part 3, and Mark and Vicky actually strike up some sympathy. Ginny, Amy Steele, makes for a very good final girl. The pacing is good, and for retro games fans, it's the only movie I've ever seen that features the old Microvision handheld. Adrienne King, Betsy Palmer, and Walt Gorney are all brought back to reprise their roles from Part 1, albeit briefly for each one of them. There's not much to say about the film. It's a fun slasher romp. It's not going to blow you away, and I don't think you'll be disappointed if what you're looking for is a slasher romp.
Well, forget you youngsters. Number 3 is a film that had a lot more relevance back when it came out, but now it's been mostly forgotten. Ghost Story. It's a wonderful story. It has some great special effects, but you'll really enjoy it. You'll really enjoy the performances of these classic actors in this film. Mostly horror seems to revolve around young 20-somethings, often playing teenagers, but young 20-somethings. This film does not. For the most part, it is about the secrets that these old men have kept. Watch Ghost Story.
I will take you places where you have never been.
Just a start.
I will show you things that you have never seen.
Beginning.
And I will see the life run out of you.
Long ago, on a cold, dark night, in this peaceful New England village, something happened. Something too terrifying to remember. Something too frightening to forget. Something that has remained a secret until now.
Is anyone else seeing things? Am I the only one having nightmares?
Universal Pictures presents Fred Astaire, Melvin Douglas, Douglas Fairbanks Jr., John Houseman, Ghost Story, from the terrifying best-selling novel by Peter Straub.
Peter Straub's Ghost Story is a long, entertaining read, but it meanders a fair piece through multiple stories. Writer Larry Cohen of The Stuff, Q, and the Maniac Cop series pares this mighty tome down to its essence, the main storyline involving the 4 members of the Chowder Society and the dark secret that they keep. The story is told through the eyes of one of Craig Wasson's characters. He plays brothers Don and David, but you watch the movie for the casting coup they pulled off. The 4 members of the Chowder Society are played by Fred Astaire, John Houseman, Melvin Douglas, and Douglas Fairbanks Jr. Sadly, it was to be the final theatrical film for 3 of the 4, all but John Houseman, which adds a special poignancy to the themes of the film. Throw in veteran actress Patricia Neal, and you have a classic cast that just can't be beat. The Borg Queen herself, Alice Krieg, plays a pivotal character, and she has a short speech that's just wonderful. You heard it at the beginning of this trailer.
Ghost Story. The time has come to tell the tale.
Well, coming in at number 2 is a number 2. And I don't mean that as the quality of the film. But number 2 is Halloween 2, with Jamie Lee Curtis and Donald Pleasance, and that enough should recommend you to watch it. It is not a great film. You should watch it back to back with number 1, and you'll see how great a director John Carpenter is. When you watch Halloween, the suspense builds, and all of John Carpenter's music comes in at just the perfect point, just the perfect pitch, and in Halloween 2, they just kind of throw in John Carpenter's score and some variants on his score, and they get the timing all wrong on it, and it always bothers me. But if this wasn't Halloween, this would be a solid slasher set in a hospital.
I shot him 6 times. I shot him in the heart. Man, he's not human.
Universal Pictures presents...
I just finished watching Scream Factory's latest restoration of Halloween 2, available only on their Steelbook, and it is absolutely gorgeous. It really shows off Dean Kundi's excellent cinematography. John Carpenter does not return as director, and that's immediately obvious, but Halloween 2 does work as a good slasher. It's just not at all the classic that Halloween was. Director Rick Rosenthal would direct this, and then return to later to direct Halloween Resurrection. And I'll leave that to you to decide. Another problem was that there were too many people in charge. Rosenthal is on record as saying he wanted this to be a stalking type of film like the first one, but by now Friday the 13th had come out, and gore and fancy kills were in demand. Carpenter and partner Alan Howarth, sorry if I mispronounced that, contribute a good score. Jamie Lee Curtis is of course the ultimate final girl, though she's sidelined for almost half the movie. Understandable considering the events of the first film. Donald Pleasance is always a delight as Dr. Loomis, or for that matter, any other character that he plays. Charles Cyphers and Nancy Stevens reprise their roles as Sheriff Brackett and Marion, respectively. Veteran stuntman Dick Warlock plays the Shape, aka Michael Myers. Halloween 2 should be a slam dunk with the hospital setting and that cast, and Dean Cundy behind the camera. And it is a lot of fun, but with Laurie Strode sidelined, we're introduced to a whole bunch of hospital workers we don't care about, so that they can be picked off one by one. Ultimately, it just feels like filler until Laurie gets out of bed. While there is an unnecessary burn stunt partway into the film, there's an excellent burn stunt during the climax. While the Scream Factory Steelbook is the definitive way to go with Halloween 2, the old 30th anniversary Blu-ray is important too, as it's the only way to get the horror documentary, Terror in the Isles, hosted by Donald Pleasance.
Well, the number one horror film of 1981 is another personal favorite of mine, and it does come from one of our big directors, and it is a werewolf-related film, so it just hit all the notes for 1981. John Landis's American Werewolf in London. The special effects on this are fantastic. Not that the ones in The Howling and Wolfen were bad. They were quite good, but they were groundbreaking here. And while people touted the werewolf effects, what I liked were I liked the Nazi monsters that appear in one dream sequence, but most particularly his friend Jack's deterioration from scene to scene as he tries to get our main character to basically out himself as a werewolf. Jenny Agutter is the love interest, and love interests don't get any better than Jenny Agutter. American Werewolf in London. Who knew the Dr. Pepper guy had it in it?
First off, I need to state that this trailer is just awful. It's just a collection of scenes and doesn't come across as a trailer. It runs too long. It's not a good trailer for this movie. Hot off the successes of Animal House and the Blues Brothers, writer-director John Landis was finally able to get his werewolf project approved. Studio executives naturally wanted Landis to again cast John Belushi and Dan Aykroyd, but Landis instead cast relative unknowns David Naughton, the Dr. Pepper guy, and Griffin Dunne. The cast is fantastic. David Naughton does a wonderful job of handling the humor and pathos as our victim/werewolf, David Kessler. Jenny Agutter is marvelously sexy as David's nurse, Alex Price. Griffin Dunne still manages to steal the show from both of them as David's best friend, Jack. The score by Elmer Bernstein is effective, but almost non-existent. This is due in part to Landis's decision to use Bad Moon Rising and multiple versions of Blue Moon in the soundtrack. The licensed songs fit the quirky nature of the movie quite well. Makeup special effects, not just limited to a werewolf, finally got their due with An American Werewolf in London. Rick Baker won the first ever Best Makeup Oscar in 1982 for his work on this film. He would go on to win again for Harry and the Hendersons, Ed Wood, The Nutty Professor, Men in Black, How the Grinch Stole Christmas, and The Wolfman. He was nominated 5 other times as well. The storyline is all over the map, and the entire plot can easily be summed up in 2 sentences, albeit with spoilers. In spite of this, Landis' script is able to mine the subject for a fantastic amount of humor without the film being a comedy. A true friendship, a sexual tryst that feels real, fantastic special effects, some scares, and a marvelous dream sequence. Michael Jackson was so enamored of this film that he hired Landis to direct his thriller video, Elmer Bernstein to do the incidental music, and Rick Baker to do the makeup effects. The Thriller video is also amazing, and features a voiceover by Vincent Price. People Watch. John Landis does a cameo as the man being smashed into a window. He also did some of the stunts for the movie. Frank Oz has a small part as Mr. Collins, and as a result, Miss Piggy and Kermit also appear in the movie as themselves. Please avoid American Werewolf in Paris.
Click like, subscribe, or even comment below because I want to hear what you think.